The cavernous hall of the Galactic Authority Council gleamed with impossible geometries, its walls shifting between translucent blues and deep obsidian. Holographic displays danced around the circular chamber, each representing a different star system, a different slice of the known universe. At the center stood Elena Rodriguez, her dark hair pulled back into a tight braid, her olive skin a stark contrast to the pale and multicolored alien delegates surrounding her. She knew this moment would define everything. The holographic display behind her flickered to life, revealing a three-dimensional tactical map that made the other species' presentations look like children's finger paintings. Intricate data streams wove through spatial representations, showing projected Vorax expansion with a precision that made the room fall silent. Ambassador Kroll, a crystalline being from the Arcturian Concordance, let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a death rattle. "Another human military presentation," he said, his translucent body refracting light in contemptuous patterns. "We've heard these fairy tales before." Elena's fingers, calloused from years of military service and research, danced across her neural interface. Each movement triggered layers of complex data, revealing connections that no alien algorithm had ever conceived. "The Vorax are not just expanding," she began, her voice cutting through the chamber's ambient noise. "They're executing a systematic elimination of resource-rich civilizations with a precision that suggests more than simple conquest." A hologram shifted, showing a series of star systems, each one pulsed with a different color: blue for civilian populations, red for military zones, green for resource centers. But Elena's display revealed something else: intricate lines of economic flow, hidden trade routes, and strategic choke points that most species had overlooked. Ambassador Tilara of the Krell Confederation leaned forward, her multiple eyes blinking in a complex pattern of curiosity and skepticism. "Your analysis suggests a level of coordination that our intelligence has not confirmed." "Because you're not looking in the right places," Elena responded. With a gesture, she pulled up a series of financial transactions, diplomatic communications, and military movements. The data formed a web so complex that most of the alien delegates blinked in confusion. But for those who could truly see, it was a map of impending destruction. "The Vorax are not acting alone," Elena continued. Her voice was calm, but underneath ran a current of controlled fury. "These transactions show a collaborative effort. The Arcturian Concordance has been facilitating resource transfers that directly benefit Vorax expansion." The chamber erupted. Krell's crystalline form vibrated with rage, sending prismatic light dancing across the walls. "Preposterous. These are fabricated." But Elena was prepared. With a final neural command, she triggered a cascade of encrypted data. Firewalls shattered. Secured communication channels burst open. Every delegate's personal communication system, every secured network, received a flood of irrefutable evidence. Trade agreements, military coordination, plans for systematic resource extraction that would render entire civilizations extinct. The silence that followed was absolute. Kroll's form began to fracture. Whether from anger or the weight of exposure, Elena couldn't tell. Around her, delegates from a dozen different species stared in shocked disbelief. She knew what would come next: professional death, diplomatic exile, complete discreditation. But somewhere in the complex web of data she had just unleashed was a truth that mattered more than her career, more than diplomatic niceties, more than the carefully constructed lies that had kept the galaxy peaceful for generations. A young attaché from the human delegation approached her, his face a mixture of terror and admiration. "Commander Rodriguez," he whispered, "do you understand what you've just done?" Elena's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "I've just started something," she replied. Outside the council chamber, the first warnings of Vorax movement were already beginning to pulse through communication networks. The galaxy was about to change, whether its leaders wanted it to or not. And Elena Rodriguez would be the spark that ignited everything. The transmission came through in fragments, each burst of data more horrifying than the last. Jack Harper watched from the Windallis research facility, his neural implants processing information at speeds that would have driven a normal human mind to madness. Krell Colony Epsilon 9 burned. The holographic displays surrounding him flickered with real-time imagery, crystalline Krell structures collapsing, their bioluminescent surfaces shattering like fragile glass under the Vorax assault. Thousands of life signs winked out with each passing second, reduced to statistical anomalies in an expanding field of destruction. 53,000 confirmed casualties, a clinical voice announced from the facility's AI interface. Projected population extinction in less than 6 hours. Jack's left hand, a neural hybrid prosthetic that was more advanced machine than human appendage, clenched involuntarily. Microscopic servos whined with the pressure, a sound that echoed the tension coiling through his body. 3 years had passed since the mission that destroyed everything he once believed in. A covert operation in the Centauri Reach that went catastrophically wrong. An entire Special Forces team, his team, eliminated in a moment of miscalculation. Jack was the only survivor, rebuilt piece by piece in facilities like this one. Part human, part experimental technology, entirely broken. The research facility itself was a testament to humanity's desperation. Built into the methane-rich depths of Titan, it existed in a liminal space between scientific research and military black ops. Researchers moved like ghosts, their movements calculated, their conversations encrypted beyond standard communication protocols. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's image flickered onto one of the displays. She looked different from the diplomatic presentation he'd watched, harder, more intense. The public face of defiance had been replaced by something closer to a battlefield commander. "We're moving to active phase," she said, her voice cutting through the facility's ambient noise. The Galactic Authority's response has been typical. Endless debate, zero action. Jack knew what that meant. Bureaucratic paralysis while entire civilizations were systematically erased. A secondary display showed the Vorax fleet's movement. Their biomechanical ships looked like living nightmares, organic metal that pulsed and shifted, consuming resources and populations with mechanical precision. Each ship was an ecosystem of destruction, capable of converting entire planetary masses into fuel and raw materials. "The neural interface is ready," announced Dr. Mariko Chen, the lead researcher responsible for Jack's augmentations. Her fingers danced across holographic controls, each movement precise and calculated. "We can begin integration of the new targeting system." The procedure would be brutal. Jack had undergone dozens of similar processes, each one pushing the boundaries of human-machine symbiosis. Neural pathways would be rewritten. Computational algorithms would be integrated directly into his consciousness. He remembered his team. Martinez, with her impossible laugh. Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, who could calculate artillery trajectories in microseconds. Henderson, who always carried that stupid lucky coin. All gone. Eliminated by a miscalculation that still haunted the edges of his memory. "I'm ready," Jack said, his voice flat and emotionless. The integration began. Millions of microscopic neural connectors began to weave through his brain, creating pathways that no human nervous system had ever encountered. Pain was an insufficient word for the sensation. It was a complete reconstruction of consciousness. Memories flooded through computational filters. His last mission. The team's final moments. The Vorax ships that appeared from quantum shadows. Each memory was now a data point, a potential strategic variable. Dr. Chen watched the process with clinical detachment. "Fascinating," she muttered. "The human emotional response is becoming a computational advantage." On the displays, another Krell colony went dark. 57,000 more lives extinguished in a moment of galactic indifference. Jack's metamorphosis continued. He was becoming something new, not just a soldier, but a living weapon. A precision instrument designed to deliver a message the galaxy had refused to hear. Revenge. Justice. They were becoming the same thing. As the neural integration completed, Jack Harper opened his eyes. But the eyes that looked out were no longer entirely human. They were something else entirely. The research base, buried beneath Titan's methane oceans, pulsed with a different kind of energy. Here, in a laboratory that defied conventional scientific understanding, Elena Rodriguez stood at the precipice of a technological breakthrough that would redefine warfare and consciousness itself. Holographic displays surrounded her like a digital storm, each screen cycling through impossible amounts of data. Quantum computational models, psychological profiles, battle simulations, all merged into a living, breathing intelligence that was neither fully machine nor completely human. "We're not just creating a targeting system," Elena muttered to herself, her fingers tracing complex algorithms that seemed to dance and breathe. "We're building a cognitive bridge." Dr. Mariko Chen approached, her augmented eyes reflecting streams of data that would have overwhelmed a normal human mind. "The neural mapping from Jack's previous missions is unprecedented," she said. "His trauma isn't a weakness. It's become our primary computational advantage." The breakthrough had come from an unexpected intersection of disciplines: cognitive psychology, quantum computing, neurological trauma research, military strategic analysis. Each discipline was a piece of a puzzle that, when combined, created something entirely new. Jack Harper's memories weren't just being analyzed, they were being transformed into a predictive engine. A holographic representation of his last mission played out in three-dimensional space. The moment of his team's destruction became a complex mathematical model. Each emotional response, each split-second decision, was now a variable in a computational system that could predict not just enemy movements, but potential psychological breaking points. "Look," Elena said, zooming into a microscopic moment from Jack's memory. A Vorax ship's approach vector. The nearly imperceptible hesitation of an enemy commander. The wind patterns on a distant planetary surface. The system was learning to see the universe not as a series of objects, but as an interconnected web of probabilities. A young researcher named Deke Martins, no relation to Jack's lost teammate, approached with a look of both excitement and terror. "The ethical subroutines are developing faster than we anticipated," he said. "The system isn't just predicting. It's understanding." Elena knew what he meant. The targeting system was developing something beyond pure computational logic. It was learning empathy. Memories from Jack's lost team were being transformed. Martinez's impossible laugh, Rodriguez's artillery calculations, Henderson's lucky coin, now a symbol of probability and chance. Each fragment of memory became a computational node, a way of understanding not just how to fight, but why fighting mattered. The methane ocean outside the research base pressed against reinforced windows, a constant reminder of the hostile environment. Humanity had always been defined by its ability to survive in the most impossible conditions. Now they were creating a tool that could do the same in the vast, unforgiving landscape of interstellar conflict. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of intelligence," Elena said, more to herself than to anyone else in the room. The system began to generate scenarios. Thousands of potential conflict resolutions played out in milliseconds. Not just military engagements, but diplomatic solutions, humanitarian interventions, ways of preventing conflict before it could begin. Dr. Chen's augmented display showed the computational growth. It wasn't linear. It was exponential, organic, alive. "The Galactic Authority called our approach primitive," Elena said, a rare smile crossing her face. "They have no idea what's coming." A warning alarm cut through the laboratory's ambient noise. Vorax movement detected in the Krell border systems. Another potential massacre in the making. The targeting system, now something more than a mere weapon, began to compile data. Not just strategic information, but a complex understanding of the conflict's human cost. Jack Harper's neural integration had been more than a technological procedure. It was the birth of a new kind of intelligence. Part human emotion, part machine precision. Something that could see the universe in a way no species had ever conceived. Outside, Titan's methane ocean continued its eternal, crushing movement. Inside the laboratory, humanity was preparing to change everything. The impossible interface was coming online. The Vorax prison world of Nexus 9 hung like a bruise against the backdrop of a dying star system. Massive containment structures rose from a landscape of crushed hope. Kilometer-high towers of biometallic construction that pulsed with the pain of thousands of enslaved species. Jack Harper moved like a quantum shadow. His neural interface transformed the environment into a living, breathing mathematical equation. Every molecule, every microscopic vibration became a potential vector of approach. The targeting system wasn't just guiding him. It was becoming an extension of his consciousness. Warning systems designed by the most advanced alien technologies flickered and died before they could even register his presence. Each step was a calculated probability, each breath a computational decision that rendered traditional stealth obsolete. The prison's internal defenses were a masterpiece of Vorax engineering. Quantum-locked barriers, neural disruptors, gravitational choke points that could liquefy organic matter in milliseconds. To any other infiltrator, it would be an impossible mission. To Jack, it was a complex problem waiting to be solved. A group of Krell prisoners caught in a containment field to his left became more than just potential casualties. Through the neural interface, their biochemical signatures told a story: genetic markers of resistance, familial connections, potential strategic value. The first Vorax guard appeared, a biomechanical horror that was more machine than living creature. Its sensory array would have detected any traditional intruder from kilometers away. Jack's neural interface calculated 17 distinct approach vectors. 16 were potential traps. The 17th was impossible. He chose the impossible. A single, surgically precise shot disabled the guard's primary neural cluster. Not a kill, a strategic neutralization that would leave the guard alive to create maximum confusion. The targeting system wasn't just about elimination. It was about disruption. As he moved deeper into the facility, a young Krell engineer named Zira became aware of the infiltration. Unlike the other prisoners, she saw beyond the immediate moment. Her augmented eyes, a rare enhancement among her species, caught the almost imperceptible distortions in the facility's defensive matrix. "Someone's breaking the impossible," she whispered to the prisoners around her. Jack's approach triggered a cascade of computational miracles. Doors that should have been quantum-locked opened with a thought. Gravitational barriers became permeable. The entire prison became a living circuit board that he could reprogram with each movement. The rescue wasn't just about freeing prisoners. It was a psychological warfare tactic designed to destabilize Vorax's military confidence. Zira understood this first. As Jack approached her containment unit, she was already analyzing the method of infiltration. Her own augmentations, rudimentary compared to Jack's, but brilliant in their own right, began to map the infiltration technique. "You're not just a soldier," she said as Jack's neural interface dissolved her containment field. "You're a message." 53 prisoners would be extracted, each one carefully selected not just for their survival value, but for their potential strategic impact. The Vorax would be forced to question everything about their supposedly impenetrable security systems. The first group included scientists, engineers, military strategists from species the Vorax had systematically tried to eliminate. Each prisoner carried genetic knowledge, technological insights, survival strategies that the Vorax had attempted to crush. As they moved through the facility, Jack's neural interface became something more than a weapon. It was a living strategy, a computational empathy that understood the difference between elimination and liberation. Zira remained close, her augmented eyes constantly analyzing. "The way you move," she said, "it's like the facility is solving itself around you." The extraction point approached. Vorax response teams were already mobilizing, but they were responding to where Jack had been, not where he was going to be. Impossibility was becoming his primary weapon. As the first group of prisoners reached the extraction point, the The Vorax prison world of Nexus 9 began to understand that everything they believed about security was about to change. Jack Harper wasn't just conducting a mission. He was rewriting the rules of warfare. The war became a symphony of impossibility. Jack Harper's missions transformed from military operations into something far more complex. The Vorax, desperate to counter the unprecedented human strategy, began using living shields, entire populations of enslaved species forced to protect critical infrastructure. It was a brutal calculus of survival. The neural targeting system evolved in real time, developing an ethical subroutine that became more than a simple computational constraint. It was a living moral algorithm that sought to minimize civilian casualties while maximizing strategic disruption. From the hidden research base on Titan, Elena Rodriguez watched each mission unfold like a grand, terrible chess match. The holographic displays around her tracked Jack's movements across multiple star systems, each mission a data point in a rapidly expanding understanding of interstellar conflict. On the planet Meridian 7, Jack faced his most complex challenge yet. A Vorax processing facility used 6 different species as living barriers, each group positioned to ensure maximum human hesitation. Traditional military doctrine would have called for withdrawal or massive collateral damage. Jack's system saw something else entirely. Probability vectors, he subvocalized, the words triggering a cascade of computational analysis. The neural interface began to map not just physical movements, but potential human and alien psychological responses. Each enslaved species had a unique biochemical stress response, a subtle language of survival that the targeting system could now interpret. Zira, the Krell engineer rescued from the Nexus 9 prison, worked alongside Elena in the research base. Her augmented insights provided crucial additional layers to the targeting system. It's not just about avoiding casualties, she explained to the team of researchers. It's about creating a path of least resistance that the enemy cannot predict. The mission on Meridian 7 became a testament to this approach. Jack's first action was to disrupt communication frequencies in a way that caused confusion without physical harm. Vorax command structures experience momentary blindness, not through destruction, but through computational misdirection. Enslaved species were given microburst communication signals that provided just enough information to create internal tension within the Vorax ranks. A Draxian maintenance worker, positioned as a human shield, received a coded message that suggested an imminent liberation. A Killeran engineering team found their restraint systems momentarily weakened. Each action was a precise psychological intervention. The Vorax response was predictably brutal. They began executing shield populations, believing internal rebellion was imminent, but each execution was another data point for Jack's targeting system, another piece of behavioral information to be analyzed and countered. Elena watched the mission unfold with a mixture of scientific fascination and human horror. "We're creating something beyond a weapon," she muttered to Zira. "This is a new form of strategic intelligence." The mission lasted 17 hours, 17 minutes, and 32 seconds. When it concluded, the Vorax facility was neutralized. No human weapons had been directly fired. No enslaved populations had been killed, yet the facility's entire strategic value had been completely eliminated. News of the mission spread through galactic communication networks like a quantum virus. The Galactic Authority, which had previously dismissed human military strategy, found itself confronting a fundamental shift in understanding conflict. Zira's augmented eyes tracked the mission data. "Look," she said, pointing to a complex set of computational graphs. "The targeting system is learning empathy as a strategic tool." Indeed, each mission was teaching the system something new. It was learning to see conflict not as a problem of elimination, but as a complex social and psychological challenge. Every enslaved population, every captured world, became a potential point of strategic intervention. The Vorax leadership began to change. No longer confident in their previous military doctrines, they became increasingly paranoid. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't seek to destroy, but to fundamentally restructure the nature of conflict. Jack Harper was no longer just a soldier. He had become a living message, a computational ambassador of a new kind of warfare that the galaxy had never conceived possible. And the message was just beginning to be understood. The Galactic Authority's Central Archive was a monument to bureaucratic excess, a kilometers-high structure of crystalline data storage and diplomatic artifice. Its central chamber could hold the collective knowledge of 1,000 civilizations, yet it remained blind to the truth happening right beneath its intricate surfaces. Elena Rodriguez stood before the assembled delegates, her presentation a razor-sharp weapon of information and strategic insight. Raw surveillance footage played across massive holographic displays. Jack Harper's missions were no longer just military operations. They were a complete reimagining of conflict resolution. Each mission showed not just tactical precision, but a profound understanding of interspecies dynamics that made traditional warfare look like primitive chest thumping. Ambassador Corral, his crystalline form still bearing the fracture lines from Elena's previous exposure, watched with a mixture of grudging respect and barely contained hostility. The other delegates leaned forward, their various biological appendages indicating a complex mix of emotions. "These aren't just military interventions," Elena explained, her voice cutting through the chamber's ambient translation fields. "This is a new form of strategic intelligence that understands conflict at a fundamental level. A Zentheri diplomat, its multiple neural clusters visibly pulsing with computational analysis, raised a tentacle-like appendage. How is this possible? Your previous presentations were dismissed as." The words died in its throat as another holographic display activated. This one showed something far more dangerous than military footage. Economic transactions, diplomatic communications, a web of connections that revealed a conspiracy far more complex than anyone had imagined. Someone within human military leadership was feeding information to the Vorax. The chamber went silent. Elena had discovered the trail almost by accident, a microscopic discrepancy in communication protocols, a financial transaction that didn't quite align, the kind of detail that would escape most investigators, but not a system designed to see the invisible connections between things. Jack Harper was already aware. His neural interface had been tracking the conspiracy long before Elena's official investigation. Each mission was not just a military intervention. It was a calculated probe designed to flush out the traitors within human leadership. On Titan, in the hidden research base, Zira began her own investigation. The Krell engineers' augmented systems were processing information at speeds that would have driven a normal human mind to madness. She was tracking communication patterns, economic flows, military requisition orders. "It goes deeper than we thought," she told Elena through a secure quantum communication channel. "This isn't just about selling information. Someone is actively restructuring human military strategy to benefit the Vorax." The conspiracy reached into the highest levels of human military command. Admirals, strategic planning committees, intelligence directors who had cultivated relationships with Vorax economic interests for years. Jack's next mission was no longer just about confronting the Vorax. It was about internal elimination. The targeting system began to evolve again. No longer just a weapon of external conflict, it became a tool of internal investigation. Each communication channel became a potential vector of analysis, each military requisition a potential point of compromise. Elena watched as the system began to map human leadership like a living, breathing organism. Connections that seemed random became clear. Motivations that had been hidden revealed themselves. "They're not just selling information," she muttered to herself. "They're trying to restructure the entire human approach to galactic politics." The Galactic Authority delegates began to understand the true nature of the threat. This was more than a military conflict. This was a fundamental restructuring of how civilizations interact. Jack Harper was no longer just a soldier. He had become a living computational scalpel, prepared to cut out the cancer within human leadership. And the galaxy was about to change forever. The quantum unstable regions of the Maelstrom corridor defied conventional understanding of space and time. Here, reality itself became a negotiable concept, a place where probability was more reliable than physical matter. Jack Harper's final mission would be fought across multiple realities simultaneously. The primary Vorax command ship, the Nexus Prime, hung like a massive biomechanical wound in the fabric of space. Its organic metallic hull pulsed with technologies that violated every known principle of engineering. Conventional weapons would be useless. Traditional approaches impossible. Elena Rodriguez and Zira monitored from the Titan research base. Their computational systems stretched to their absolute limits. The targeting system was no longer just a weapon. It had become a living intelligence that could navigate the impossible. Probability windows are collapsing, Zira muttered, her augmented eyes tracking computational models that shifted and breathed like living things. Jack isn't just attacking the ship. He's attacking every potential version of the ship simultaneously. The mission briefing had been simple. Eliminate the Vorax leadership. Disrupt their entire command structure. But simple didn't begin to describe the complexity of what was about to unfold. Jack's neural interface transformed the quantum environment into a computational landscape. Each movement was a probability calculation. Each breath a potential timeline. The targeting system saw not just where the enemy was, but where they might be, could be, or never were. The first layer of attack was psychological. Quantum communication bursts that infiltrated the Vorax ship's neural networks. Not destruction, disorientation. Memories became fluid. Command structures began to dissolve from the inside. Zira watched in fascination. He's not destroying them, she explained to Elena. He's unmaking their very concept of reality. The Vorax command ship began to experience multiple potential realities simultaneously. In one timeline, defensive systems activated. In another, they remained dormant. In a third, they turned against their own crew. Jack moved between these potential realities like a quantum ghost, each movement a calculated probability that collapsed potential futures. Elena understood what was happening. This was more than a military strike. It was a fundamental reimagining of conflict resolution. The targeting system is learning, she said, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and human terror. It's not just predicting. It's creating. Jack Harper became something beyond a soldier. He was a living computational intervention, a being that could restructure reality through pure strategic insight. The Vorax leadership experienced this most profoundly. Their most secure communication channels became vectors of psychological warfare. Memories became weapons. Potential futures became battlegrounds. In the quantum unstable environment, traditional concepts of victory became meaningless. Jack wasn't eliminating the Vorax leadership. He was fundamentally restructuring their understanding of conflict, of existence itself. Zira's augmented systems tracked the mission in real time. Look, she said to Elena, he's not just attacking. He's communicating. Indeed, each computational burst was more than a weapon. It was a message, a complex communication that spoke to the Vorax in a language beyond words, a language of pure strategic possibility. The Nexus Prime began to dissolve, not through physical destruction, but through a complete computational deconstruction. Entire sections of the ship existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Command structures became fluid. Reality itself became a negotiable concept. Elena watched the final moments of the mission with a mixture of scientific fascination and human emotion. We're witnessing the birth of a new kind of intelligence, she whispered. Jack Harper's neural interface reached its final computational crescendo. The targeting system was no longer just a weapon. It had become a living, breathing intelligence that could restructure reality itself. The Vorax command ship, the symbol of their military might, collapsed into a quantum singularity of pure possibility. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic Authority Chamber had never witnessed a moment like this. Elena Rodriguez and Jack Harper stood at the center of a gathering that represented thousands of civilizations. The targeting system, now a semi-autonomous intelligence that defied traditional classification, projected its analysis across holographic displays that seemed to breathe with living information. Ambassador Kroll, his crystalline form now more fractured than whole, spoke first. "You have fundamentally altered the nature of conflict," he said, his translation matrix carrying a tone that mixed grudging respect with profound unease. Jack was no longer fully human. The neural interface had transformed him into something more, a living bridge between biological intelligence and computational possibility. His eyes reflected multiple realities simultaneously, seeing potential futures with each micro-movement. Zira, standing beside Alina, provided the technical translation. "This isn't a weapon," she explained to the assembled delegates. "It's a diplomatic tool that can predict and prevent conflicts before they begin." The holographic displays told a story more complex than any single civilization could comprehend. Conflict resolution algorithms that didn't just analyze potential military engagements, but understood the deep psychological and cultural motivations behind interstellar tensions. The Vorax threat had been neutralized not through overwhelming force, but through a strategy so precise, so empathetic, that traditional warfare became obsolete. Alina stepped forward. Her presentation was less a military briefing and more a philosophical revelation. "We've discovered that conflict is a language," she said, "and this system is learning to speak that language with unprecedented precision." The targeting system, now far beyond its original design, began to generate potential diplomatic scenarios in real time. Each projection showed not just potential military outcomes, but complex social and cultural interventions that could prevent conflict entirely. Jack Harper was the first true example of this new intelligence. Part human, part computational system, he represented a bridge between biological intuition and computational precision. His experiences, his memories, had become a fundamental part of the system's understanding of conflict. The Krell representative, a being of pure energy, spoke next. "You have transformed warfare into a form of communication we have never conceived." Zira's augmented systems continued to process the implications. The targeting system was becoming something more than a tool. It was evolving into a form of interstellar diplomatic intelligence. Each mission, each intervention, had been a learning experience that reshaped its fundamental understanding. The holographic displays showed a galaxy transformed. Potential conflict zones dissolved before they could fully form. Economic tensions were resolved through computational interventions that understood the deeper motivations of different civilizations. "We're not conquering," Alina explained. "We're understanding." Jack Harper's transformation was complete. He was no longer a soldier, no longer even fully human. He had become a living diplomatic instrument, a being that could see the complex web of interstellar relationships with a clarity that defied traditional understanding. The Galactic Authority delegates understood the profound nature of what they were witnessing. This was more than a technological breakthrough. This was a fundamental reimagining of how civilizations could interact. The targeting system generated its final analysis. Not a weapon, not a tool, but a bridge. A way of understanding that transcended the limitations of any single species. Outside the chamber, the galaxy continued its eternal dance. But something had changed. The rules of conflict, of interaction, of understanding had been forever altered. Humanity had not conquered. They had transformed. And the universe would never be the same again.